I don't know. Yes. Can you guys hear us? Just send us a little message back. Yeah, they can. Turn the volume off. Okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dale Popovich. This is Facebook Live Saturday, and we're broadcasting from Lola and Land O'Lakes, which is the Land O'Lakes Artists Association. We've been doing that here for quite a while. I want to let you know that, do a little advertisement here. I have a watercolor impression workshop of the Great Northwoods, October 10th, 11th, and 12th. 3 full days at the Great Plains Watercolor Society in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. This should be a fun workshop. This is the first time I'll be demonstrating there. And I also have Zoom classes at the Palette and Chisel. We just started one 2 weeks ago, and we have two more before Christmas. We don't have anything in October because I'm gone to Great Plains Watercolor Society. If your art league or organization is looking for a workshop, online or in person, you can email me at popovichdale@gmail.com, and we will get right back to you. And for more information, you can go to my website at dalepopovich.com.
And tell them your Dillman's is filled up.
And my Dillman's workshop that is in a few weeks here, that is full at this point. So I'm sorry if you can't get in, but apparently people want to come up north and take a workshop.
And then we just finished Dale's newsletter, and it was on clouds. It was the Facebook Live from June 17th. It's been pulled off Facebook and put on YouTube. But this whole colorful newsletter goes through that particular video. It also gives you the reference packet. It talks about painting clouds. And then Dale's got a workshop coming up
next Friday
here in Lola about painting clouds.
It's a all day workshop.
And then in addition, Dale talks about his rosemary brushes, and you can get a download. It's a handout that you could put in a ring binder if you're keeping tabs on Dale. Also, a little bit of art marketing from me, from the Wise Fine Art Marketer.
This is my wife talking, Marilee. She's my brains of the operation.
And so I think it's really important, even if you're a beginner, to keep tabs of your paintings. And I've included a free archival sheet where you fill it out, what competitions it's been in, how much you paid for them, your supplies. We do this with every of Dale's paintings, because later on, we didn't do it in the beginning, and later on, we wish that his very first one-man show, we never knew who bought them, we never knew how much they sold for. He had 34 paintings in the show, and we don't have any history on it. And that was back in the
1986.
Yeah. And then the last sheet is our shameless self-promotion, where Dale talks about what he's
Where
doing.
to find me, what I'm doing, at what time. Okay, today we're doing a fall scene, which is going to be here soon in the Northwoods. The leaves are just starting to turn just a slight bit, and I know it's just the middle of August, but that's the way it goes up here. Now, what I'm going to be painting today is a fall scene. I hope you can see this okay. I'm going to hold it up to the, so you can see it. I know it's,
reflection.
we got reflections all over the place with the lights. Here we go. You're in the way.
Oh, I was trying to help you out.
I can't seem to get there. Well, anyways, it's a fall scene, and it is the road that actually belonged to my parents. And it goes up off into the woods. It was always beautiful in the fall. And I'm doing this without a drawing. We're going to be watching our patterns of lights and darks and colors. And it's a very good way to paint a painting without a drawing for watercolor, because it makes you concentrate on the larger elements of the painting first, and then we worry about the detail later.
I will put a link to the reference packet, the 4-page reference packet. So if you want to paint this later on or paint along with Dale,
And
You'll be getting that packet.
And the colors I'm using are from Core Paints, which is made by Golden Paints. I always like to plug them because I really enjoy their watercolors. I have used most professional brands through the last 45 years. And the only color that they don't have that I have to buy from Winsor Newton or another brand is a brown matter. Brown matter is kind of a combination between alizarin and burnt sienna mixed together. All my other colors are Core Paints, and I have to say that their charts here that they have, you can get one mailed out to you, I'm sure, are very accurate in their depiction of their colors. So let's get started. I'm going to work wet on wet at the beginning, and not real wet. I don't want it sopping wet. I just want a little bit of a spritz of water on there so that the watercolor moves. We want to work our edges all very soft, and at the beginning this is going to be kind of very ambiguous, molding the trees and so forth. And I'm going to start by taking the brown matter and the yellow medium. I'm using yellow medium, brown matter, sap green, cobalt or ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. So we get a nice orange here. And I'm going to start by up here, and I'm going to put in a lot of color. So you work your colors quite a bit more intense to grade down color later on. I don't worry about where things go, but I'm also trying to mix colors that go with the painting here. And I'm going to take a little bit more yellow here. And every 3, 5, 6 brush strokes, change your color, change your temperature, change your value, so that it's not the same going all the way across. A little bit more red over here, a little bit more yellow over here. And I'm going to put a little bit more yellow here in the center. And I'm working from lighter values to darker values. Now, while this is still wet, I'm going to go here in the middle, and I'm going to take the sap green and the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the raw sienna and a little bit of the brown matter. So I want that slightly grayed down. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my dark that's in there. Your darks will dry lighter as they dry. So I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow medium and a little bit of the brown matter here. And I'm going to add some other greens that are back in here and over here. And while we're doing this, I'm going to spritz just a little bit of water on here. That will help with the texture. I'm going to rinse my brush out, and I'm going to take the brown matter again with the yellow. And I'm going to add a huge amount of color right in here. I'm looking at these shrubs and bushes and so forth. But I'm being very conscious of where these colors fall. I'm going to take a little bit of the green here that's in here. So it's going to be very, very abstract looking at the beginning. I'm looking at the road here. I'm going to take the ultramarine blue and the sap green here and a little bit of the brown matter to gray it down, and I'm going to put a kind of an extreme dark in the middle here. It's going to dissipate quite a bit, but that's kind of where things go off into at this point, that dark recessive look to it. And clean the palette a little bit and take the burnt sienna, and I want to get the feeling of this road in here right away, because this is going to dry fairly fast, I think. And take a little bit of the green that's up in here, like so. Then I'm going to manipulate it just a little bit. Now I'm going to take my sponge. I have a natural sponge here. And I'm going to go up in here and I'm going to soften some of these spots up in here, the light holes of the sky. I didn't bother painting blue in the sky because it's very overcast. And I felt that we really didn't need that. So I'm allowing the sky to be a very light color of what the trees are. And when it's overcast, you'll find that the colors will appear to be more intense. Now, at the same time, I'm going to take a paper towel, and I've done this before. Wet the paper towel, squeeze out all of the moisture, and I am going to create some texture on there, and I'm waiting just a little bit while I talk, because timing is everything in watercolor. When to put down pigments, when not to put down pigments. But I've got this rolled up like so. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to lightly rag roll, kind of like what we did in the 70s on the walls. Some colors here. And I want to have a little bit of texture that I can work with. And it happens automatically. Now I know this looks like more like a Rorschach test at this point. But I am going to pull out the road just a little bit. I can always darken it in later. But I need to have that road remain where it's at. So, if you hang on just for a moment, I'm going to take the toothbrush and take some of the color that I already have mixed up. I'm going to add a little bit to it, a little bit of the brown matter, and I'm going to spatter this in here and add a little bit more color without having to touch the paper itself. Mix up a little bit more yellow and a little bit more yellow in here, because I'm going to go in and use a negative painting procedure where you paint the in-between parts. I'm going to take a little bit more brown matter here to get a little bit more orange. And I want this a little bit grayer over here. So I'm going to add some green to it. And we'll get that a little bit darker. And when I go back into this, especially this area in here, it's going to make the rest of it pop. So right now we got a little bit of a abstract pattern of color going on here. And I'm going to manipulate the watercolor while it's still wet. So I'm going to be going into the background and lightly lifting some of the light that's coming through the trees back in here. I can always tint it another color, but this is kind of a fun way to work and not have to worry about the drawing part of it, worry about following the drawing. And you have to remember, nature is very forgiving. But I'm pulling out little lights that I feel are important at this time, so that I can maintain that and watch where these things are at. And what you can do also is, after it dries, you can also spray it with a little bit of water and pull up color instead of spreading the color. And that gives you a whole different effect also. So I'm going to just lighten this up just a little bit and kind of soften all these little marks that I put in. But I do want to show some form back here. I'm a great proponent of making your dark areas look semi-interesting. And I'm going to clean the palette off here for a second. I clean the palette a lot so my color stays fresh. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to wait here just for a minute. Usually what you do is you wait for the glistening of the water to disappear. I got some here, here, and a little bit over here and here before I would do anything. I very seldom use the hair dryer, although I do it. I use it during demonstrations because of a time factor, but I don't overuse it. Usually I sit and watch the watercolor dry. So we're going to sit here just for a moment. I'm waiting for my better half to come back from wherever she's at. She's out in the gallery confirming something. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow-green in a couple areas here while it's still wet, and it should stay in one place, and a little bit down here. So hang on just a moment. I need you to read comments to me. I need you to read comments to me.
I've been looking, there's not many comments coming.
Really?
I've got the iPad with me.
I didn't know that. Sorry. Excuse me.
No, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Nope, nobody.
Nobody? How many people are watching?
19.
Let me get some clean water here. And I always feel it with the back of my hand to make sure that it's dry. It's not at this point. You don't want to feel it with your palm of your hand. But I am going to take the hair dryer in this case, since all the glistening of the water is gone. And I'm going to blow dry it just for a minute or so. Now you have to wait till the glistening of the water is gone before you try blow drying it, because otherwise you'll take a chance of it blowing in different directions.
Don't touch it until I get the picture. I got the hand in it.
Okay, now it's dry, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to this background, which you always go back to the background. In this case, it is the center, and I'm going to start forming this area, and a little bit up in here. So I'm going to take my number 10 round, excuse me, and my number 5 round. And I'm going to take the sap green, the ultramarine blue, and a little bit of the burnt sienna, not too much, and some of the brown madder, and a little bit more ultramarine blue. So I don't overmix it here. I try to keep it very simple, because one of the nicest things about watercolor, you put down a brush stroke and you end up with various colors. So I can tap this off a little bit, and I'm going to start dry brushing back in this area here, up against other shapes that are out in front. And I'm going to be very careful. I'm slowing down my process quite a bit. And I have a pine tree in here that I want to denote, and I have a couple pine trunks here. And then I'm going to continue by dry brushing this in, allowing the watercolor originally put down to show through, and then bring it up into here. Now, I'm doing this very casually, but I'm also going a little bit on the slower side because I don't want to head off in the wrong direction. But it's starting to take form. And I'm going to bring this color down a little bit lighter value, up and over a few things, and I'm lightening the value as it comes out because it's receiving more light, and it gives me the opportunity to tease some of these other colors in. Now I'm taking just a wet brush, it's a clean brush. Now I'm going to add a little bit of color to it, like so. And I'm going to bring this up into the other areas up in here. I'm going to dry brush in some areas of dark that are poking through the trees, and at the same time I'll take the toothbrush just with water in it. If you have any questions, please ask. So that allows this to soften up quite a bit without having to overhandle it. I'm going to take a little bit of sap green here, tap the brush off on the paper towel, and continue trying to get this dark pattern in here. And again, the toothbrush just with water on it, like so. Take a little bit of blue here and add a couple accents of blue in here and over here that will meld with the color. And I keep on using my paper towel to dry my brush off on. And you can tell that I have this very soft over here. I don't want a lot of hard edges. I try to keep my edges as soft as I can for as long as I can. Go in here, and while this area is wet, I'm going to add some darker statements that will then bleed out. and still remain soft. And I'm going to go up the other side here. So I keep on looking at the patterns of the light and the dark. And again, trying to soften it. And I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow medium here along with the brown matter. So I get that red orange, and I'm going to spritz this in here like so. So it has something coming up in the shadow that has this color in it, and a little bit more up in here. Then I'll start painting with that. So I'm going to take a little bit more yellow so we have a little bit lighter glow to this. And I'm going to start by adding in that yellow orange that's up in here. And moving the green into the area ever so slightly, dragging it along. And a little bit more yellow. So I keep on changing the value, color, intensity. And then the toothbrush a little bit more so that the color spreads. And I add a little bit of color in here. And we are using white gouache today, by the way, as an extra enhancement to the painting. And I'm going to take a little bit of the green here with the yellow green, make it into yellow green. And I'm going to dry the brush off, and I am going to add the texture down in here. Like so. And then I'm going to come across to the other side of the painting, to the right side. And I'm going to dry the paint off a little bit. And I'm going to come in here, leaving some light areas up in here. I don't want to cover all of it. And I'm going to throw in some yellow in here, like so. And get this area covered up on the upper right hand side with a little bit more of a red orange. Just some big broad brush strokes. Not concerned about what's going on too much, but I'm trying to balance off some of the darks and so forth that are in here. And we're going to leave it set a minute. And I'm going to pull out some lights and so forth again, but I need to get some of these darks darker up front here. And it's starting to take form. Some yellow greens up in here. And some yellows. And then I will take the toothbrush just with water on it and hit that so that some things will soften out. There's other things that don't need to be. And I'll take a little bit of the yellow and the orange here, mix it together to get a yellow orange, and I'm going to spritz that right in here like so. Then I'm going to take care of the road, and we're going to leave it dry. So I have the road here with the burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to reform the road here. So we're adding a little bit of the blue to that to slowly gray it down. I'll take my bigger brush and move the color around. So we get the formation of the road a little bit quicker here. Then I'll take my sponge and manipulate the watercolor. So I'm going to pull out a little bit in here and a little bit back in here because I want that kind of light peeking through back here. And I'm being very careful on what I'm lifting, because if you lift too much, you will regret it in the long run. But still, I'm trying to keep everything on the softer side so that we don't go too far in one direction. Now you take a paper towel here, and I'm going to lift just a little bit in here because I want that light to come forward. A little bit of light coming through there. And this will help create some of those forms that we need to have. But now we got the big parts in the right place. Nobody has any questions out there.
They're very quiet today.
Rough night last night, huh? And I'm going to bring this out a little bit. I'm going to actually rag roll this up in here just a little bit. So let's leave this dry just for a moment. So if you have any questions, I'm willing and ready to answer them for you. If anybody is awake out there.
Oh yeah. There's 28 people out there quiet as church mouse.
And again, this is only one way that you could attack this painting. You can work wet on dry paper to do this, but I work wet on wet paper. It depends on how you want it to look. So you have to kind of experiment.
Take a picture. Okay.
Now, what I'm going to do, there are some lighter trees in here, and I want to put them in now so that I have placement for them. If I cover them up a little bit, I don't worry about it, but I'm going to lift these out with my 1-inch brush. This will help give sort of an idea of what I want to happen. But this is going to be kind of a, you're working from abstract to realism here. And I'm making sure that the separations between the trees are all a little bit different. And I'm going to put a couple in right back in here.
Okay.
And a large one right here.
We have questions.
Wonderful.
Grab the laptop. All right. Well, Kay said she's mesmerized.
Me too.
And Elsie said you make it look so easy.
It's not easy. I will tell you that I floundered quite a bit as a student. I have a landfill, as I tell everybody, in my name someplace down near Chicago, where I grew up. But it's starting to take the form of what's here. Now, what you have to remember, and thank you, Elsie, what you have to remember is that nature is very forgiving. So if a tree is not in the right place or the color has changed a little bit, they're not going to run around and tell everybody that it was done incorrectly.
Why don't you guys tell us where you're from? That's always fun to hear.
So we're gonna wait for this to dry a little bit more, and then we got little puddles of water here and there. I did one on Thursday, and it was a scene from the Memorial Day weekend. We had my father-in-law up here in 2014. It was the last picture on the picture roll that he took with his digital camera, and I painted that yesterday. It's the second time I've painted it, but I just did a small study of it a number of years ago. But yesterday I painted it, and then I finished it a little bit after the Zoom class. And looking at through my father-in-law's eyes of how he took pictures sometime was interesting. He was a pretty good photographer, amateur photographer, had his dark room and so forth. But I always found it impressive on how he looked at things. And this was the last picture on his camera. So I decided to paint it, and I felt it turned out very well, and I finished it after class.
Okay, we got some locations.
Yes.
We know that Elsie is in Orlando. She's in Dale's palette chisel weekly class. Doreen is in Appleton.
Hello, Doreen. Thank you for watching.
Carolyn, oh Carolyn, we know where you live. You're just down the street from us.
Morning, Carolyn.
Belle is baking in Seattle. Is it hot?
I'm baking. Doesn't sound good, baking.
Well, I know they said we're supposed to have a horrible heat wave.
Yeah.
Kay is in St. Charles, Illinois. Oh, there's some nice antique shops there.
Yes, I didn't grow up too far from there. I grew up in Glen Ellen and up here in northern Wisconsin.
Oh, Susie, how you doing? She worked at Frankel. She said, let's see, I went to the American Academy of Art and was taught by Mr. Krajewski. So did I. I was there when he was in what they called his Hitler days. He was really tough.
Mr. Krajewski just turned 80 on the 13th of August.
So, and she's a friend with Vanessa. I remember you were at Vanessa's mom's memorial and service. So yes, she said she needs a little refresher course. Well, you'll notice in the comments I put a link to the reference pack so you'll get the photo, what his pencil drawing looked like. We use an app to get a value photo. And then the fourth page includes his colors, what he wants you to learn, what you're going to walk away with. And she said she was at the Academy in 1981.
Oh, okay. That was 3 years after I started teaching.
And then on
at the Academy.
top of that, if you look in the comments, we also have a link to his August newsletter, which is all on clouds. And it has a link to, it was Facebook Live, but we put it on YouTube. And it's just the rough video of him painting clouds on Facebook Live.
I'm going to hair dry this while Marilee tries to talk to you. So hang on.
So you'll find he's got a ton of videos on Facebook Live. Susie. And he also has on YouTube. And then if you want to, we have an online art school as well. And if you go to dalepopovich.com, you can find all kinds of goodies. Elaine is from Ontario. She's a little late. Well, Elaine, if you can catch the whole video, it's going to be a replay, and it'll be there. And if you want to get the reference packet, you could paint along with them, stop and start. Sue, let's see. Bella said that it is 85 to 99 degrees in the last 10 days. in Seattle. Oh, baby.
Too hot.
At least you're not getting a hurricane. And Elsie, this session is, you can rewatch it once. It takes an hour, I think, for Facebook to put it up forever, or as long as we want it up. And then it's going to be the September newsletter. Dale's going to be talking about the painting in the newsletter. So, but if you needed it right away, it's probably by this afternoon. Also, Sylvia, she said another outstanding demo with Dale.
Thank you.
Also, Susie, oh, come on. Susie says, great, she just needs to buy time somewhere. You always have to find time for yourself. And contact Vanessa and check out her paintings. She's been painting with Dale, whether it was with the palette and chisel class on Zoom or other videos. She had to take a little break, but she had painted 100 watercolors with Dale. That girl is so good. All right, enough of me talking.
Okay, I forgot to mention I'm using indigo watercolor paper. It's a handmade paper. It's cold press, and I ordered 99% of my things from Cheap Joe because they're very reliable. They always have what I need, and they get it to you fairly quick. And if you order enough, you don't have to pay for shipping. And they even deliver out in the woods well, now that we're living up in northern Wisconsin. And in a few days will be a year of us living up here permanently. So anyways, what I've created here, if you take a look at the color in the background here and so forth, was the first wash I put down, and then I added the dark, and then I started lifting. I wanted to be able to see through this dark through the background. Now this may be too light, but I can always tone it down as I move through it. But I have a pattern here, and one of the things that I'm always trying to tell the students is that you're painting a painting, not the photograph. The photograph is a guide, nothing more than that. And you're giving your impression of what you want the viewer to see. And I always feel it's important to put a little bit of yourself in there and not worry about what the photograph is telling you, or even if you're out plein air painting, which I did this last week for Lola for their benefit. And there were 3 of us artists out there painting, and paintings were auctioned off at a nice price for Lola. But anyways, going back to this, it's something that I have a pattern here. And the pattern seems to be working fine. I'm going to work with the pattern. And it's not exactly like the photograph, if you've seen the photograph. And I like to kind of alter things and manipulate things. And nature is never, ever compositionally correct. You have to correct things, alter the light and dark patterns, make them balance off a little bit better, balance off the intensity of the colors, the temperatures, and the values. And I'm always first concerned about the values of the painting. That's what does all the work. You could add all the color you want, but if the value's wrong, it's going to be wrong. You have to make sure your darks are dark enough, your lights are light enough, and the midtones are working well with both sets of values. So we're going to go back into it. I'm going to go back to the background again. And I'm going to take my smaller brush, my number 5 round, and I'm going to start mixing up some different types of greens here. And I need a little bit more of my brown matter. As I said, I don't use alizarin crimson. I think I may have mentioned at the beginning, I use brown matter. Alizarin crimson, when I was being taught as a student, it was not permanent. It was considered a stain, and it wasn't permanent. It would fade over a certain amount of time. And I stopped using it because it turns pink. Which is not always what you want, and it fades in value. So they do now have a permanent alizarin crimson, but I'm not a great fan of alizarin. It doesn't work well with other colors as I would like it to, but the brown matter has a little bit more of an earthy tone to it, having a feeling of burnt sienna in it. So I have changed my colors over the years a number of times. So I'm mixing up kind of a grayish green at this point, and I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it. And it's grayed down. It has a little bit of the burnt sienna, which is brown, or it's actually a grayed down red-orange. And I'm going to start up in here. And I'm going to dry brush in, tease in the negative areas around some of these intense colors. And I'm trying to get the feeling of deep in the woods here. So we always have the darks with the lights that are shining through or poking their heads through. And as I go out, I'm going to get this a little bit lighter. And I'm always going back to the same puddle of color and adding more water to it, or I'm adding other color to it until I need a totally different color. It helps me unify the painting a little bit more. And I'm going to bring this color up and around and expand on it. As it goes out from this extreme darkness, I'm having it lighten up because it's receiving more light. And I am going to take a little bit of that burnt sienna and add it to this. And I want to put a little bit more gusto into the road here. I want this to be a little bit more texturized. And then I'll work up to the road. Instead of out the road to the edge, I'll work to the road. And I'm going to do that a little bit right now because I need to form the upper part of the road here. So I take my brush with the blue-green and I'm going to start forming around the road to get this looking like it's going uphill, turning the corner a little bit. I used to do a lot of sledding down this hill as a kid in a toboggan and sleds and so forth. And then we have our pine trees up in here. And I'm sweeping in the same direction as the pine trees move. And I'm always encouraging the students to remember, paint in the direction in which the form is moving. In other words, if the grass is moving with the wind in a certain direction, paint in that direction. Don't paint in the opposite direction. And I'm just signifying this just a little bit, just to give the idea of what's there. And then I'm going to go to a larger brush, my number 10 round, or 12 round. I'm going to take yellow and a little bit of the green here. It's grayed down a little bit now, and I'm going to paint that up in here. It's not as bright as it is in the photograph, but again, I don't care about the photograph all that much. I'm going to add a little bit of color in there and a little bit over here. And then I'm going to a larger brush because I want to get this settled over here. So I'm going to take the brown matter with the yellow, and I'm going to mix up a very bright yellow-orange, maybe a little bit more red of the brown matter, and a touch of the burnt sienna. And that is simply to tone it down because I don't want it too intense over here. I want it more intense over here. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to start dry brushing right up against this here. And I'm going to use the toothbrush to soften the edges, just with water. And I'm going to take a little bit more yellow, and I'm going to go up on top of the trees. And I'm adding a lot more yellow up here. And I want to tap the brush off on the paper towel. And like I said, I will be adding gouache to this to give it a little bit different embellishment. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Some watercolor societies won't allow you to enter things with gouache in it, but I like to teach painting all aspects of it. So I'm bringing this into here a little bit darker. So I'm, again, looking at the patterns of things. Now, I'm going to take my sponge, and I do want to pull out a few lights up in here that I feel are important. And I'm very careful not to take too much, because if you take out too much, it will get too spotty, too busy, and you'll end up covering it up again or ruining the painting. So I'm being careful at this point. Then I'm going to take the yellow, mix it right in with some of the brown matter, and I'm going to spritz right in here so that this becomes a little bit more intense and pulls away from this up here. And I'm going to add just a little bit over here. Now the paint is fairly thick, and the yellow medium has a tendency, as far as the opacity goes, to be a little bit more opaque than some of the other colors. Some of the other colors can be more transparent. And I want this to darken up just a little bit more and come right into that shrub there. So I'm adding a lot more of the ultramarine blue, and I'm going to add some more of this over in here. But it's a slow process at this point. The very beginning of the painting is always very quick, blocking it in. But as you move through the painting, you slow your process down.
We
Yes.
have Doreen has to cut out early, and she wants to know if she'll be able to see a replay where and when. Doreen, come back to Dale's business page, which is the Observer Artist Watercolorist Dale Popovich. And if you go up to the top where it says photos and all the little menu bar, there's 3 dots. Click on that, you'll see events, and it's going to be in there probably in about an hour after he's done. And also there are other Watercolor Escape Saturdays all the way back to when we first started doing it in March of 2020. So there's a slew of them there. And if you have any questions, private message Dale. You know, if you want him to see your painting, send it to him private message. And he's always got a lot of information for you. And the last thing, I just posted a brand new handout we created regarding the rosemary brushes that Dale's in love with. I don't know if you've heard him say that they're in his will because they are such good brushes. They last such a long time. I just want you guys to know that he is an affiliate member. He is a representative of Rosemary Brushes, and they pay him in brushes. So he gets a couple pennies for every brush that is bought through him. And eventually, well, he just bought one that he's going to be doing a video on, and it's a mop brush that's made out of goat, right?
Goat.
Yeah. And then he bought one that was made out of wolf. So you'll be seeing those on his Facebook page. All right. You have a nice weekend, Doreen.
Thank you for watching. Okay, so I'm kind of honing in on the road and some of these other darks to carry this across. What I have to try to do is make this passage different than this one, which it's starting to do that. I have opened up the road just a little bit more, and I've got to close it up here. There we go. As it turns the corner here. just a few little things here and there. And then I got to go into underneath the shrub here. And I'm putting in areas. I'm going to keep this very ambiguous to begin with as far as the painting goes because of the time factor. You never really get to finish what you set off to do in many cases. But I want to show you how to start the painting. If you get the painting started correctly, finishing it is much easier because if you're fighting with it at the beginning, it has a tendency of not coming out. But if you get the first part right, it usually works out well. So I'm going to take a little bit of this orange here with leaves alongside the road here, and I'm going to soften the edges of the road. Okay, I'm looking at different things at this point, and I'm working around the whole painting. I don't work in one spot too long for the fact that you can get caught up in a number of things, and I don't want to trap myself. So you want the whole painting to be finished at one point, not little points here and there. So I'm bringing up some of these darks a little bit further up at this point. And if it gets too sharp edge, I use the toothbrush to soften it, and it'll kind of blend into the trees. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit more dark, and I want to show this to be a little bit different shape, so I add some different shaped darks around it. I'm going to bring this in here like this. I want to bring a little bit of dark off over here so that it completes off the paper here. Soften it a little bit with the brush. And I want to bring some of that, there we go, adding a little bit of green to the brown, and I want to bring this down and out. I want the road to fall into shadow a little bit more. So I'm going to darken that in a little bit more, and I want to come into the foreground here and tone this down. So I keep on looking. I've kept this kind of very dark and elusive at this point, more so than what the photograph is. It was, like I said, it was an overcast day, which we have a number of these up here in the fall. Even though the blue sky is always very nice, but there's something about an overcast day in the fall that makes those colors really pop. So I'm going to take a little bit more yellow here, and I'm layering a lot of this on. And I will be adding some more toned down value here. I'm not trying to get this to be too bold up here, but I need to add some darks to that. So I'm going back to the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the sap green, tone it down, and I'm going to bring some of the darks up into here. They're not in the photograph, but it needs it to break this area up here. So I am adding it whether it's there or not. Because I haven't added really any tree trunks here except some of these light ones I've already pulled out. So I'm going to take a little bit of water there, tone this down. Pull some of that dark down a little bit here and there. And that will help break that up just a little bit more. Now I'm going to take the sponge and manipulate it just a slight bit. And then pull this down like so. All right, time to clean the sponge off. I'll be right back, don't go away. We're gonna start adding the trees and using the gouache paint.
Can I take a picture?
Yep. All right. I've got basically the right things, the big things in the right place, and now we're going to start working to where we can get down to some of the detail. And I'm cleaning my palette off here. We're going to be adding a little bit of gouache to the paint, white gouache. And when you add white paint to a color, it does a number of things. The first thing it does is it lightens the value. The second thing it does is it lessens the intensity. It's not as bright or as intense or pure. And the third thing it does is that it makes it cooler, because white will cool a color down. So you have to be kind of careful about how much white you're adding. I can remember doing my first self-portrait in oil painting class, and I used too much white to lighten the color. Instead of taking a lighter value color, I took white first, and that's what you always add last. But it was something that I did, and I got it out into the outside light, because I had the wrong kind of lighting in my little makeshift studio. I had a warm light instead of a balanced light, and it looked like I died on the way up the stairs.
Susie had to leave, the lady that used to work at Franco with me.
Okay.
But she said, thank you so much.
You're
She
welcome.
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good.
And I don't know if Dale mentioned this earlier in the beginning, because he's got so many workshops and things going on. He's not going to be back for Watercolor Escape Saturday until the third Saturday of November. Then
Or the second, I'm not sure.
yeah, and then we're going to do one in December to round it off.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to take my small brush, and I'm going to take white paint here, making sure that my brush is clean. And I'm going to put a puddle of color there, and I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow here, and I'm going to add a little bit of the white to that. Now, when you're adding white to the color, it makes it opaque. You can't see through it. But you can also use it translucently by using a lot of water with it and glazing things. And it's almost like stained glass. You can see through it, but not clearly. So I am going to take this color, a little bit more of the brown matter. There we go. And I'm going to take the color, and I'm going to start adding, and I can cover a dark with it. Now, I find my students sometimes, when I had my studio in Indiana, I'd catch them fixing things, and that's not the intention. My intention of this was to show you a different way of doing things. It's not cheating, it's just a different way. So I am adding some color in here that's opaque, and I'm going to kind of soften it a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to it. And I'm going to bring down some of the finer handlings, because I just want to show you how you can add things to a transparent watercolor. If you enter the Transparent Watercolor Society of America, they will not accept the painting with white gouache in it. But the American Watercolor Society will allow it. So it depends on their rules of the road of what they'll accept and what they won't. So I'm just adding some final embellishments before I start adding tree trunks. I'm not going to add it everywhere because it will be too equal everywhere. So I'm going to add just enough on and around the center point here. I want a little bit more color in here. I don't want this to equal that. I'm not concerned about too much detail at this point. In fact, I'm not concerned about any detail when we get into this, because we can get bogged down in detail. But it's something that you can investigate. I've done a lot of opaque paintings. In other words, it's completely opaque with gouache. And they are fun to do. It's really the best of both worlds when you come down to it, because you can paint from dark to light or light to dark. This way, in watercolor, you're always painting from light to dark. In oil painting, you're painting from dark to light. So it's just a matter of manipulation of the color. Now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in some of the trees. I want to see where I set here a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to use the blue and the green here a little bit with a touch of the burnt sienna. You'll find that trees are not browned or not gray all the time, or whatever the case may be, but they are different values of things that are around them. So I'm going to weave the trees in and out of the leaves. And I'm putting them in where I feel that they are needed at this point, without too many branches. At this point, I add that in later on. But this will make more sense about where or what's holding up this mass here. So I'm kind of teasing it in here and there, just to give it an idea of how it should look. And I'll add a little bit more brown to it in some cases. And I'll start adding in the trees over in here. Large ones, small ones, skinny ones, making sure that they're spaced a little bit differently here and there. I'm going to put a value on this tree now. But I'm always trying to change things up just a little bit. And I got kind of a darkish blue violet here, or red violet. I'm going to put in one right here. Again, as I said, I'll worry about the branches later. I'm going to put one leaning across the road right here. Like so, and bring in a little bit of color and value on the side of the road here. And again, like I said, I'm not worried about a lot of little things in here. Where you could spend hours is usually on the detail. But it's starting to make a little bit more sense at this point. Some trees will be very light and airy, so they don't take precedent over something else, but they got to be all a little bit different. Now I'm going to use my rigger, which is a very long and narrow brush. It's my smallest brush I use, and I'm going to start adding in some of the branches that come out. And again, not showing the whole branch, but allowing to weave in and out of the foliage. But there's always a number of things that you can do with the branch, and this, we're about a little over an hour into the painting. And I didn't want to build it up too much. I wanted to keep it kind of light, airy. We have a few saplings coming out here and there. Out of these lower foliage. And I think what I'll do is I'll give this road some ruts here, which will signify it a little bit better. And then I will take the yellow paint with a little bit of white, not too much, just to make it opaque a little bit more. And I'm going to start adding some finer leaf handlings into what I'm doing here. Maybe a little bit of the orange. And I start overlapping things, which will give us a feeling of depth a little bit more. And you notice I still didn't use any blue in the sky. It's really not needed, to be truthful. But you can play around with this too much sometimes. And I still feel I need a few more light trees in here. There's no birches up in this area, but I'm going to put some birches after I finish off a couple of these trees here that I still feel need a little bit more value. So I took the ultramarine blue and the brown madder, a little bit more blue, get kind of a violet color. I'm going to put a big one over here. Some branches coming off. But these are kind of fun to do as a free form exercise, and it'll keep you a little bit looser. You don't have to worry about too much detail. And manipulate the brush, play with dry brushing, play with several different ways of doing things to see what you can get to come out of it. going to bring in, I'm looking where I need one, and I'm going to put in lift out some light value trees right in here. Not real light value because everything is kind of on the darker side in this particular photograph. But again, I'm weaving these in and out of the trees. They're not going to be bold, bright coming forward. I want them simply to be a small addition to the painting, just to help break up a few things. I think we still need something over here. What I always find amazing about in the fall, the woods become a little bit more quiet because a lot of the birds have taken flight to go south. And like I said, I don't want to over portray, but I need to lighten just a few things in here where the light hits the road. I'm lifting up, this is what you call kind of scumbling is what they call it, with paint or even with water. And I still think we need to tone that foreground down. So I'm going to take the ultramarine blue and I want to put a wash across the foreground here as a cast shadow. So that it can be from an outside source that allows you to close in a little bit more with the eye. Not a strong cast shadow, just a cast shadow. Now, the very last thing I want to do is I want to take just water and I want to spritz a little bit up in here and then leave it there just for a second and a little bit right in here, maybe a little bit over here. And you leave it there just a little bit and I'm going to pull up a little bit of texture, not too much. It'll soften a few things, like so. And then what we'll do is we'll take the tape off. Taking the tape off will tell you where you're at, what you need to add or subtract, but it gives you a bearing on how your values are looking in there, to me. Other artists probably don't care, but I'm always looking at it. And this gives me a sense of idea of kind of a frame around it or a mat without putting a mat on it. And I pull the tape away from the painting, not towards. But I kept this all very soft and kind of out of focus. I didn't want too much coming in focus here. I take a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white here. And dry the brush off a little bit. And I'm using a little bit more yellow than yellow orange, but I want to have a little bit of overhanging branches a little bit more. And when you dry the brush off, it takes some of the pigment off and you won't be putting on so much. So this has a little bit different effect on what's going on. And we'll be able to finish this up in a minute here. I want to thank all of you for watching. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can always email us.
Or private message, Dale.
But there's not too much that I need to add at this point, for the fact that I don't like to overwork a demonstration. Demonstration is a learning tool to watch how the painting is being built. Not how it's being finished necessarily, but how it's being built. But I want to thank everybody for watching, and we will make an announcement next time we have a Facebook Live. If there's any questions at this point, please give us.
Bill said
A sound
thank
up.
you. This was wonderful.
We'll let you know if the Facebook Live when it is in November. And
Just consider us gone fishing.
no, gone painting,
Gone painting, fishing.
fishing for some paint.
And I'll be out hopefully doing some plein air painting in between.
We want to do a video class on Dale's art school, Towering Winds Academy of Fine Arts, on the doing plein air as a watercolor artist. Well, honey.
Okay, well, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.